So last week, we saw Jesus do something that really didn't make sense at first. He was told Lazarus was sick, and he didn't rush to heal Lazarus, did he? He delayed intentionally. Not because he didn't care, but because he had a bigger purpose in mind. He said, "It is for the glory of God, so that the Son might be glorified through it." And when he finally arrives at this special place, just a couple miles outside of town, Martha comes there to meet him. And she says, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, but even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus tells her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha says, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." She's thinking future. Then Jesus makes the claim, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. Do you believe this?" And Martha responds, "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." That's a true confession. But even in that moment, she hasn't fully grasped it. She believes in who Jesus is, but she doesn't yet understand what it means right now. Because it's one thing to believe that Jesus will raise the dead someday. It's quite another to stand in front of the tomb of someone you love and deal with that claim in the present. And that's where this passage takes us today. Last week we heard the claim, "I am the resurrection and the life." This week we're going to see the evidence, because now Jesus is about to show them exactly what he meant when he said that. So Martha confesses Jesus as the Son of God, and this is where we pick it up today. When she said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here, and he's calling for you." That's not just a detail that John includes. That's direction. Jesus isn't just standing back. He's directing this moment. Remember these verses from earlier in chapter 11. It said, "So when he heard Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was." And then in 15 he says, "And for your sake I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him." This has never been out of his hands. He's been leading this from the beginning, and now you see that same control continue. He sends Martha to Mary. Martha goes to her. She pulls her aside and she says, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." You see that? Jesus is the one calling her, and he does it through Martha. When she heard it, that's Mary, she rose quickly and went to him. There's urgency there. Even in the middle of her grief, when Jesus calls, she responds. Even in the middle of our grief, friends, when Jesus calls, he's asking us to put our trust and confidence in him. Now, Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. Remember, this is just a few miles out of town. He hasn't entered town yet. And it's easy to read that and start wondering, why this special meeting place? Why not just go straight to the house and meet Mary there? Is Jesus worried about the Jews stoning him? That was a comment John made earlier in chapter 11, that the Jews were just about to stone him. Is he trying to protect his life? That's not what John is showing us here. Again, this is Jesus controlling the moment. He's not wavering. He's waiting. He's exactly where he intends to be until the exact moment he intends to move. Jesus is waiting just outside of the village where he meets Martha. Then she goes to get Mary, and we're told, when the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. They think they know where this is going. It's been 4 days. Maybe this is the final trip to the tomb, the final expression of grief, the final expression of loss, because everything in their minds is still about death. But what they don't realize is this: What looks like a moment of final mourning is actually Jesus drawing everyone into a moment where the glory of God is about to be revealed. What looks like Jesus stepping back is actually him already at work. He is drawing people into a place. He's setting the scene. He's directing the moment, and none of them sees that yet. And now the scene shifts. Mary comes from the house to where Jesus is. It says, now, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. We've heard these words before. Just moments ago, Martha said the same thing, didn't she? Lord, if you had been there. But see, with Martha, the conversation kept going. She said, but even now, I know whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Even now. Martha was still looking ahead, still holding on to what Jesus might do in that moment. And friends, a lot of times, that's the world that we live in, Martha's world. Lord, if you had been there, but even now. When I was 9 years old, I watched my father leave this world right before my eyes. As I walked home, I don't remember what was going through my head, but it went something like this. Lord, if you had been there, but even now. My senior year, when the future I imagined took an abrupt turn. Lord, if you had been there, but even now. When I was in my 30s, working all the time, a man who made a recent decision for Christ, asking all the questions that recent converts ask. What it looks like to really love my wife, provide for them, provide for my family, and loves Jesus at the same time, and how to balance all of that. Lord, if you had been there, but even now. When I started preaching here at AAF and I didn't know what to do, I didn't even know how to divide a text properly, but just followed my own instincts, praying to no avail. Lord, if you had been there, but even now. And so many times in between. Isn't that how we handle tribulation? See, Mary doesn't do that. She comes, she says the same words, Lord, if you had been there, and she falls at his feet. Same words, different moment. Martha keeps speaking. Mary stops and lays it all down. Martha says, even now. Mary doesn't try to resolve it. She doesn't try to explain it. She just brings it to him. And remember, Mary doesn't come to this place alone. The Jews followed her to this place. They see her fall at his feet. They hear what she says. They're moved as well. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and greatly troubled. We went through this in community group just a few nights ago, and there's another translation that phrases it this way. It says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the other people with her wailing, a deep anger welled up within him. And although that translation is trying to help us frame the scene culturally, it unintentionally makes a distinction that leads to the wrong conclusion. Mary is weeping sincerely, and the rest are faking it. And that makes Jesus angry. See, at a funeral these days, people come, and they come with different intentions. But then they would come, and what would happen is there'd be two flute players and a wailing woman. Those were the requirements for a poor family. Well, this is more than a poor family. There's no reason to believe that they didn't have money. John quotes earlier in this chapter that Mary was the one that poured out a year's worth of expensive perfume on her feet. So you can bet there's more than just a few professional mourners here. And here's what it would look like. The flute players would play. The wailing woman would cry out loud with a loud lament, clapping, yelling, and that was supposed to somehow express the grief that the family was feeling. So it was professional mourning on their behalf. And no doubt there's a couple professional mourners here at this scene. But this phrase, moved in spirit and deeply troubled, it carries the idea of a forceful stirring, almost like a snort of intensity, something rising up from within. And it often carries the sense of indignation and outrage. But here's what John actually does in verse 33. He doesn't use different words. He uses one Greek word for everyone. It's kleio. He could have made a distinction. There's a word in the Greek for weeping, and there's another word for structured wailing. But he doesn't do that. So John isn't separating real grief here from fake grief. He's showing us a room full of sorrow. Mary is weeping, the Jews are weeping, death is real, grief is real. No matter what attitude these professionals brought in with them, here at this scene, they're all weeping the same. You guys have seen this before. At a funeral, people gather, friends, acquaintances. Some are deeply affected. Others are just there to support. Others are simply present to make face. It's the right thing to do. And then someone who truly loved that person begins to break. A son, a daughter, a spouse. And suddenly the whole room shifts, doesn't it? Because now you're not just observing loss, you're seeing love. And that does something. It draws you in. It cuts deeper. Even if you didn't feel it at first, now you do. And when that kind of grief fills the room, when everything is laid bare, Jesus doesn't step back from it. He steps into it. He sees it. He's deeply moved by it. Verse 34 says, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. This isn't a distant response. He's not just angry at fake grieving. This is Jesus standing in the middle of real human sorrow. He sees Mary. He sees her grief. He sees what death has taken. And he's angered by what sin has done. Death is not neutral. And it's not natural. It is an enemy. What stands in front of him is a result of a broken world. But he's not responding to that in the abstract. He's responding to the people in front of him. He's not aloof. He's present in their grief. And he lets them see that. I want to make sure that you guys see that this morning. The God of the universe, the creator of all, our creator, weeps with us. As both God and man, he feels the reality of what is broken and the weight of what has been lost. Even the crowd sees this. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." We've got to be careful about pressing our theology on the text. Let's let the people at the scene translate the scene. They see his tears. They recognize his love. They say, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of a blind man also have kept this man from dying?" See, there it is again, that same assumption. He could have stopped this. Everyone in this scene is looking backward. Why didn't he act then? But Jesus isn't looking backward. He's moving this moment forward because what they see as the end, Jesus is about to use as the place where the glory of God is revealed so that they might believe. And notice what he's been doing. He hasn't answered their grief with an explanation. He hasn't given them a timeline. He hasn't told them why. Instead, he enters their grief. He feels it, and he stands in it with them. And now everything that's been building comes to a head. Jesus moves towards the tomb. John tells us Jesus deeply moved again. Same word, same intensity, but now it's focused. Before, he entered their sorrow. Now he walks straight at the tomb. Jesus isn't just grieving over death anymore. Now he's going to confront it. It says, "Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it." This is the place where everything feels final. The tomb, the stone, the weight of it all. Everything about this scene says the same thing. This is over. There's nothing left to do here. And then Jesus does something no one there is ready for. He says, "Take away the stone." And immediately Martha speaks up. "By this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Martha isn't questioning who Jesus is. She's just revealing what she expects him to do. See, in her mind, in everyone's mind here, this isn't fixable. This isn't reversible. He's gone. And John makes sure that we feel that. He tells us twice that it's been 4 days. See, in the Jewish culture, there was a superstition that the spirit hovered over the body for 3 days, looking for an opportunity to enter it. John says it's been 4. Lazarus is dead, stinking dead. So that by that point, everyone knew that there was no coming back. Decay had set in, hope was gone, the situation was sealed. So you can believe Jesus is the resurrection and the life someday. But then he says, "Take away the stone." And now it's not about someday anymore, is it? It's about right now. And the problem is, the stone feels final. And that's where this hits us, because we all have a stone, so to speak. A place in our life where we've already decided this is over. This isn't changing. This isn't worth praying about anymore. It's that friend that you've been dying to see come to Christ. You've devoted so much of your time and effort, years, but at this point it feels impossible, like they're too far gone. And if you're honest, you've already sealed their fate in your mind. It's that situation in your family that's been broken for so long, you don't even think of in terms of restoration anymore. You just manage around it. It's that sin that you've fought over and over and over. And now you've just learned to live with it. You're not free of it. You're just used to it. It's that place where you've stopped asking, stopped expecting, stopped believing, stopped praying about anything that could possibly change. You still believe in Jesus, but that part stays closed. And it's right there in that tension that Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" That's not just a reminder for Martha, it's a confrontation. This moment is not about what you see, it's about whether you will trust what he said, because belief is not tested when things still feel fixable. Belief is tested when everything feels final. So they take away the stone. And then Jesus does something that at first feels out of place. He prays. But listen carefully to how he prays. He says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me." This isn't a request. He's not asking the Father to raise Lazarus, is he? He's not saying, "God, would you do this?" He's saying, "Father, I thank you. You've already heard me." In other words, this has already been settled. This was never in question. And then he tells us why he's saying it out loud. "For the sake of the people standing around, that they may believe." See, this prayer isn't about getting something from God. It's about revealing something to them in this moment. Which means the delay wasn't random. The suffering wasn't wasted. The 4 days in the tomb were not a mistake. This whole moment has been moving somewhere from the very beginning. The stone, the grief, the confusion, all of it was setting the stage for this, because what feels final to them has already been accounted for by him. Even here, he's still revealing, still drawing, still calling people to believe. And don't miss what he's revealing in this moment. When Jesus says all of this is happening so that they may believe, the question is, believe what? Believe what? Not just that he can do something powerful, but what he said is true, that he is the resurrection and the life. Not someday, not just in the future, but right now. And the reason he can say that, the reason he can stand in front of the grave and speak life is because of who he is. This isn't just power on display. This is identity being revealed. He's showing them that he is not just sent by God, he is one with the Father. And more than that, he is God in the flesh. In Ezekiel 37, when God speaks to a valley of dry bones and brings life out of death, he says, "You shall know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and raise you from your graves, O my people." See, when God gives life to the dead here in Ezekiel, he's revealing who he is. And now Jesus stands in front of this grave and does the very same thing that God said only he would do. That's why Jesus doesn't ask for this to happen. He doesn't plead. He just speaks. Because the one standing there is the God who gives life to the dead. Which means when Jesus says, "I am the resurrection and the life," he's not pointing you to something future. He's revealing who he is right now. He is God right now. When he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with the linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. He comes out alive, but he's still wrapped in death. Everything changes in that moment. All the questions, Lord, if you'd been there, all the confusion, all the grief. It's all answered with it's not answered with an explanation, it's answered with a person. Not Lazarus, Jesus. Jesus has been claiming all along that he's the resurrection and the life right here and now, and he just proves it. The one who stood there and wept is the same one who now stands there and commands the grave. He was never late, he was never absent, he was never limited. He was never limited. What they thought was the end was the very place where the glory of God would be revealed. And then Jesus said to him, "Unbind him and let him go." Lazarus has been given new life. He's been brought out of the grave, but he's still carrying what belonged to it. And for some of you, that's exactly where you are. You've trusted Christ, you've confessed him as Lord and Savior, but you're still carrying the weight of what he's already freed you from. Still bound by the sins of the past, still bound by fear and anxiety, still bound by what used to define you. But when Jesus says, "Unbind him," he's saying, take off what belongs to the grave. You don't have to carry the things that belong to death anymore. He's given you new life because he took the sins of all who would believe upon himself. He took them to the grave so that in God's eyes those sins are not just forgiven, but they're forgotten. Because they're both paid for and erased, you can be free from them. Not only because he died, but because he rose again to new life. See, Lazarus was raised to life, but he died again. Jesus rose never to die again. He is the resurrection and the life. Do you believe that? And if you do, what does that look like right here and now? It looks like Jesus calling you when you don't understand where he's leading you. It looks like Jesus meeting you in the middle of real grief, not standing far off, but stepping into it. And it looks like Jesus standing in front of what feels final in your life and speaking life into it. Not someday, right now. Is there something in your life that feels like it's not just a stone in front of you, but a boulder and nothing's moving it? The question isn't whether Jesus can do something about those situations. The question is, will you trust him in the middle of those situations, during the storm? Because the same voice that called Martha is the same voice that called Mary, is the same one that met them in their grief, is the same voice that called Lazarus out of that tomb that day, and that's the same voice that calls you today. Don't stop at the miracle. Don't just stand there and look at it. The miracle is meant to reveal something. It's a sign for you to see the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. It's for you to believe that he is God. It's for you to know and believe that he is the resurrection and the life, not someday, but right here and now.